Hello and welcome. I am not your regular host. In fact, my name is Seana Collins, and today I will be interviewing Miss Stefanie James, whom you already know and love, to celebrate a very special milestone for the Stellium Astrology Podcast. This is the 100th episode. So let's get started. Hi, Stefanie. How are you?
I'm okay, Seana. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Now, I don't know if you've talked about kind of our background or how we got started, but just so that any new listeners know, Stefanie and I did a podcast for a little while about all things tinfoil hat, and I do want to kind of take a little bit of the credit in getting you started and making it something that the itch turned into a
Yeah,
desire to do the show.
you absolutely did kickstart my podcasting career. I'm always interested in listening to podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts since probably 2007. Is probably when I really kind of discovered podcasts, and I listened to all sorts of things. Like there was one that I used to listen to on the BVRN radio network, and it was Captain Jack, and it was a conspiracy radio show, and it was all sorts of weird conspiracy. But it was like all the sort of stuff that they talk about on Joe Rogan now. But back then it was really it was like the most interesting thing to me, and it really inspired my kind of Aquarius, Scorpio, 8th house kind of stuff. So yeah, but you did actually, after I went on to, it was THA Talks, wasn't it, that I went on?
Mm-hmm.
And as a guest, and then we kind of just hit it off, didn't we?
Most definitely, my stellium sister over here. So shout out to Paul and David from THA Talks
Yeah.
for giving us an opportunity to meet and starting this whole process. Now, for the 100th episode, I believe you would put out an AMA and Ask Me Anything call to your Patreon members. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that, like how folks subscribe, what you've been doing on there, and kind of what led you to say, you know what, it's time to do an AMA.
Well, so the Patreon page is, there's usually a link at the bottom of each episode. I've created my own link tree now, so all of the traffic from that would normally go to Linktree goes to my website, which I think is fair. Yeah, so people can just sign up. At the moment, I've got 3 tiers on my Patreon page, but I'm currently in a process of reviewing everything that I do because I've been through huge changes over the past year or so. And so everything's it feels a little bit hanging in the balance and trying to figure out what I'm doing. But at the moment, as it stands, I've got 3 tiers on my Patreon page, and all you need to do is click on the Patreon link, which is in the link at the bottom of the podcast, and you can subscribe on a monthly basis. You can either pay like £1 or $1, and then I think like £4 or $4, and then £8 or $8. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, and you get a bunch of different stuff for each tier. But yeah, I've just put myself on hiatus for a couple of months because I am going through some big stuff outside of the podcast and everything. I'm still podcasting, but the amount of work that was going into the Patreon page, I needed to take a little holiday from that and, like I said, evaluate and think what I'm doing. But you can still sign up, and there is still stuff on there, like lots of content, lots of learning videos, downloads and things like that for anybody who's interested. But yeah, for the Ask Me Anything, the AMA, I was thinking, how do I mark the 100th episode? I just thought, I do a lot of talking on this podcast, as you can probably tell. I don't ever usually run out of things to say, but I don't know if I've necessarily had it focused on me specifically. Like I've talked about people I know, experiences that I can relate to, and potentially some of the experiences that I have had through astrological transits or occurrences, but no real opportunities have arisen for people to directly ask me anything astrology or non-astrology related. So I thought it would be fun to put myself in the spotlight, this Scorpio moon, this spotlight dodging Scorpio moon, to put her in the spotlight and answer some questions, and hopefully not feel too awkward or exposed.
Well, we'll try to be gentle with you. I do
Yeah.
have a mix of questions that I personally have, questions from your Patreons and followers, and then a couple from close members within your family circle. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and get started with an easy one. What is the coolest little known fact about you?
Okay, so the coolest little known fact I personally think is that I used to make crop circles. I used to go out in the summer evenings in the I think probably around 2007, 2008, around podcasting time, all around the time that actually Pluto went into Capricorn, Capricorn being my sun sign. I was going out with a guy at the time, and we had the Mercury conjunction. My listeners will know, if they've been listening to every episode, that I talk about certain people. He and I had the Mercury conjunction, and he really inspired my 8th house Aquarius Mercury to come alive. And it was all things weird and wonderful. So it was like conspiracy radio stations and aliens and crop circles and all that sort of stuff. And while we were in the fascination of all of that, we'd go camping a lot, all the time. And the campsite that we went to was in the heart of crop circle country. And basically one evening we were there, and some guy came up to us and went, "Would you like to make a crop circle with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And like at first we were like, what if this guy's not for real? Like, what if he's like just basically trying to get us away from our tent and then nick everything, and like proper wondering, like, this guy could be a murderer, like who the hell is this person? But we just decided to take a chance, and we went out and made a crop circle, and we made one of the most amazing crop circles ever. It was a very kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of like a landmark crop circle. And I just was blown away with the fact that not only had we gone out and made a crop circle, we kind of bumped into the guy that makes all the most amazing ones. And, because I was always open-minded, I was like, it could be aliens, but it could be people, And I think that people are very quick to assign any kind of talent or creativity without much explanation to something otherworldly, without kind of crediting how incredible human beings actually are. I think that's what I discovered through crop circle making. It was just, I didn't like go out and make them and then go tell people that I'd made them. I used to love hanging around in the crop circle pub and listening to people, sort of going, "Have you seen this latest circle? It's from the Palladians," and blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not saying that the creativity didn't get channeled from that source. I'm just saying that people actually went out and made it themselves. So, but I used to love that. I used to really, it was a thrill. And I did it for a few years, and I went out with some of the most talented artists. People who now are actually getting commissioned to do land art on beaches and in the snow, like those huge things. It was a great thing to be a part of, and I don't share that on an everyday basis with people. So and usually when I tell people, they're just like, "Oh my god, tell me more." So,
and hopefully the statute of limitations for any kind of trouble that you would get for that has already gone and passed.
The way I see it, I think, is that as long as I don't own up to specific artwork, they can't pin it on me.
Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
And it kind of segues into one of my questions for you, and gets a little bit darker, but if you could go back and spend time with any criminal mind, and now the two important points: you won't get murdered, you won't get arrested. Who would you hang out with and why?
Okay. Now it's really difficult actually to answer this, because there's so many criminal minds. And also, like, I've been very interested in quite a few, but there is, like, immediately, and this is weird, I don't know why, my mind went to Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm like, why do I want to hang out with Jeffrey Dahmer? Seriously, like, that guy is crazy. But there is something very there's something very normal about him. I mean, aside from the stuff he did, like, he was a normal kind of person. Well, I say that, but like the things that he did were not okay. But if we're not going to go down like a serial killer route, I don't know really. Like, I watched Mindhunter. Did you watch Mindhunter?
Oh yeah.
Now, what's that guy called? What's the big tall guy? The big tall guy that he kind of befriends, and him. I can't remember his name. He was in it. Is it Ed Kemper?
Yes, it was. It was
Yeah.
Ed Kemper who was what the
Oh,
college
yes.
killer.
Yes. Yeah, him. Because he's another one who's like quite intelligent. I think the thing is, the fascination for me is I would want to talk to those people in the same way that that guy was interested in Mindhunter. It's like going and talking to them and finding out about like their kind of what kind of caused it, their motivations and things like that. But at the same time, the problem, I think there's a quote when I did my astrology of crime talk for the I think I did it on behalf of the London School of Astrology. It was one of my first talks. One of the quotes was, any kind of criminal act that's committed by a human becomes a human act. So if one person can commit it, it becomes a crime that anybody can commit. So therefore, it becomes a human act. So and the other thing that we have to remember is that someone can be born on the same day as a serial killer and not be a serial killer. They can have the exact same chart and not commit those crimes. So astrology doesn't tell you if someone is going to do those kind of things, but you can look at the natal chart and see what the motivation behind some of it could have been for the person who did decide to do those things. So you can see motivations and drives. But yeah, the fact is that everybody, they're all humans at the end of the day. And I think the frightening thing would be if you sat down and talked to them, half of them would probably be relatively quite normal to talk to. Like Ed Kemper was relatively normal, but he did enjoy talking about what he did. It's kind of scary.
Right. I think they did a really good job with the portrayal of him. And then if you watch, there's a ton of different stories and different shows that are like, the confession tapes and things like that, where you can go through and be like, wow, if I had passed this person at the grocery store, I would have never known that they were, hiding three bodies in their trunk or what have you. So I agree that, criminal minds are definitely interesting. It would be hard to choose just one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to get the names correct, and please correct me if I completely butcher them, if you know. But Sasha X had asked, who is a dead person that you'd want to hang out with? So kind of on the same vein, but a little less.
Not necessarily criminal. Do you know the person that really springs to mind? Okay, there's a couple now that are coming to mind. One of them is Bill Hicks, because he is basically just one of the most incredible comedians that ever lived. And still to this day, I'm yet to find somebody who speaks as much truth as he does. He's incredible. The other comedian, well, I say comedian, the other person who is just as funny as a comedian, but not, is Terence Mckenna, the botanist, who is very into like mushrooms and psychedelic experience. Like, he's just like, the stories that man can tell, and the kind of the philosophies as well. A bit like Alan Watts, there's the people that can really get you thinking. They just say one sentence and you just go off on like a kind of, wow, that was so profound kind of thing. So yeah, I would love to have a conversation with Terence Mckenna or Bill Hicks. There's plenty of musicians, like Jimi Hendrix, for example. But yeah, I think I'm going to just leave it there, because I could go off on one for ages about all of these.
What do you think you would do? Would you do mushrooms with Terence Mckenna?
Oh gosh, I don't know, because I think I'd be a bit. I think I'm too maybe when I was younger I might have been a bit more adventurous. But I probably would have to do mushrooms with Terence Mckenna, wouldn't I? You couldn't not, could you? Yeah. The thing is as well, like in this country, I don't know about in the US, I'm pretty sure they probably are, but in the UK they are starting to really explore the medicinal healing qualities of psychedelics, as well as cannabis and stuff like that. So now we can get cannabis on prescription in the UK, which isn't widely publicized, it's not many people know that. But you can get it on prescription in the UK, and they're starting to look into very seriously look into the research that Timothy Leary started back when he was working as a professor in Harvard and did some very, very questionable medical trials with LSD. But, you know, Timothy Leary, Terence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson, that whole kind of psychedelic movement, you know, figureheads, I find them all very fascinating people. I think that they'd be way too hardcore for me to be able to sit down and do any kind of psychedelic drugs with. I think that they'd be on impossible to imagine kind of dosage, you know, like I think I'm just too I play it too safe these days. Like I don't even barely drink alcohol anymore. Like I don't think I'd last them like 5 minutes on anything stronger than a glass of wine. So she says with a cup of tea.
Well, that's one of the big changes that I think occurs when you have a major life shift like you have, you know, bringing another soul into the world is going to shift your perspective a bit.
Yeah.
Do you think it's changed the way that you look at the work that you do at all?
I think it has. It's changed the way I do everything. Like it's funny. I was looking up. I've been going through these changes. Been going through this stuff, and one of the things that I found a name for what I've been going through. I think it's called matrescence. Matrescence, I think it's called, where you are after you have a baby. Lots of women go through it. It's specifically women, actually, or people that give birth to children, babies. But you'll go through this like dichotomy of ego, where suddenly you are two people. You are a mum and you are the person you used to be, except you aren't the person you used to be anymore. But that person is still there, but that person is lost. And then there's this new person who knows that they've got to fall into this role and do the best they can. So that's why you find a lot of mums give up on becoming, you know, what they always dreamed of being, in order to fulfill their new mother role in a more I don't know, to avoid the mum guilt and to be wholly one thing rather than split in two and living these two separate lives. I'm pretty sure anyone who's a mum will be listening and kind of like agreeing that they understand what I'm saying. There's a word for it now, matrescence, and there's loads of podcasts about it. I haven't listened to any of them yet, and there's books as well. So I'm currently in my Gemini ascendant research mode, but yes, it has affected the work that I do. It's affected my entire outlook on life. One of the times I really noticed that I'd changed a lot was I was watching. Have you seen the film Don't Look Up?
No.
It's on Netflix. And it's Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio, and I can't remember, Timothy Chalamet, and you know, a load of Kate Blanchett, Meryl Streep, whatever, like loads of famous people, loads of really good actors. And it's one of my favorite films because I love a disaster movie. This Scorpio moon and 8th house sun loves destruction, and I particularly love it if the world gets destroyed. I'm not a horrible sadistic person, but I just enjoy it. I don't know, especially if it's like an asteroid or something. And so that film ticked all the boxes for me. But towards the end of the film, spoiler alert, okay, there's a comet that comes and hits planet Earth. Basically, there's this bit where this woman is like swishing a little baby around in the bath, and at that moment I suddenly felt dread. Instead of like watching the film just like and that bit just going over my head, I suddenly was brought back into who I am now as being a mum. And I was like, oh my god, if that was Ewan, like if that was, imagine it now. It's changed even like something that I would have considered to be just an escapism activity, something that I would have just enjoyed just to escape from everything and just to indulge in the most Pluto of Pluto, you know, viewing sort of activities. And yeah, it's kind of taken that little thing away from me. It's bizarre because I'm learning who I am all over again, and I'm a different person to the one I was before I had him. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. And also, you know, I'm kind of understanding the challenges that it makes me sound like I'm going all feminist, but like it really is making me understand the challenges that women face. Men too face equally difficult challenges when they become parents, but with women I can relate directly to the specific struggles. And you know, I think that it helps me to be more understanding to those kind of things, and actually to understand in more depth what happens through transformation and change. You know, that the loss curve, the typical transformation Pluto process that everybody says it's transformation but can't really articulate. You know, that is something that is a true transformative process that is so destructive you don't even know who you were, let alone who you are anymore. So yeah, it's profound, basically. Had a profound impact.
That's beautiful. I love the way that you explain that. And I think it provides a really cool kind of insight for your listeners and followers.
Yes.
I want to go a little bit more lighthearted and then jump into some astrology questions for you.
Mhm.
This one is something about yourself that most people will think is a lie if you told them. And now we've already done the the crop circles, so we've got to dig a little bit deeper.
Something that people would think was a lie if I told them. Yeah, I've done crop circles. You know, I tell people stuff about myself. Whenever I meet somebody new, I always tell them stuff about myself, and I drop something into conversation and they're just like, oh my God, wow, really? Because to most people who are, I don't know, like just, I'll say normal, like people that haven't lived kind of a bonkers life like me, I guess I'm kind of weird. Off the top of my head now, I'm trying to think of something. I don't know. I used to, well, this wouldn't seem like a lie, maybe, but I used to live on a boat. Is that, would people think I was lying if I said I actually lived on a boat for a while? Yeah, I did. I lived on a narrow boat on a canal, on the Kennet and Avon Canal. In fact, I lived on the narrow boat with my ex with the Pisces stellium, who is the guy that I had the Mercury conjunction with. He was having a Neptune transit, and I was also having a Neptune transit. Neptune was transiting my Mars. Saturn's there at the moment, but Neptune was transiting my Mars, and he had Neptune transiting his Sun not long after I'd had my Neptune to my Mars. So that was when he ended up getting the boat. That's what a Pisces, someone with a Pisces stellium, including their Sun, does when they have a Neptune transit. They get fully into the water. Yeah, let's get a boat. And so yeah, he got a boat, and the boat had problems and it would often sink. We'd have to bail it out. I think it was my birthday, we were at the cinema, I can't remember what we were watching, but somebody texted me and said, I thought I'd let you know that the boat is under the water. But because we were so far away, like we were miles and miles and miles, it would have taken an hour or so to get there. So I just didn't tell him until the end of the film. I just waited until the film finished. I went, I just wanted to tell you, yeah, there's nothing we could do. Like, so I just said, yeah, just by the way, the boat sunk. One of the saddest things about that was that I had some Ozzy Osbourne slippers, and I love my Ozzy Osbourne slippers, and they got ruined. They got totally ruined. But yeah, that boat was a true Neptune transit kind of boat. It was just there was so many problems with it. The engine had problems. It would the reason the boat sank was because boats have something called a bilge pump, where you press a button and it pumps water out from the I can't even think of all the terminology now, but through the boat, that water goes into the boat as it's moving along, and then you use the bilge pump to pump the water out. And if you leave the bilge pump on, it lets water in and in and in and in. And we didn't leave that bilge pump on, but people would often come on the boat and go, oh, I wonder what that button does, and then just press it and then not know, and then they're like sinking the boat and they didn't realise. But we did have an engineer come on the boat to look at the engine, and he pressed the bilge pump but didn't switch it off. Now, you could say that we should have checked it and made sure it was off, but we didn't. And yeah, so numerous times it sunk. On one time, it was my birthday, and we didn't have anything to pump it out properly with either. So bailing out took a long time. And then there were like these mushrooms that grew. It was a really horrendous, horrific, awful, rubbish, but wonderful at the same time. Like when it worked, it was amazing. But when it didn't work, it was awful. It was truly challenging. But yeah, that, I mean, don't know if people would think that was a lie to hear that I lived on a boat at some point or another. but that's the best I can think of right now. And as soon as we stop talking, I'll think of a million things that were better than that. But right now, that's all I can recall.
So, living on a sinking ship.
That's a Neptune transit for you. Yeah.
Right. So, Karis wanted to know, if you hadn't found astrology, what do you think your life would be like? What was your second passion?
The difficulty is I didn't really know where I was going or what I was doing. I was lost. And astrology found me at a time in my life, or when I say it found me, I was interested in astrology for a long time, but the serious study of astrology, which didn't even start off serious, by the way, I didn't know what I was going for, what I was going to do, but I felt drawn to going to astrology school. My other option that I was seriously considering was studying anthropology at Goldsmiths University. So I was like, oh, astrology or anthropology. And I spoke to my sister and she was like, oh, I think that you'd really enjoy astrology. And, you know, she kind of gave me the nudge. But I don't know what I'd be doing, to be honest with you, if I hadn't have gone to astrology. Well, the thing is, I used to be quite, I was at a point where I was quite depressed. I'd been going to therapy for a number of years, and I'd been on antidepressants and all sorts of things. I was living a life where I was like taking tablets just to function in daily life. And it was one of the things that as soon as I started studying astrology, I looked at my chart, and when I understood enough about astrology, I realized that I am a Capricorn with a Gemini ascendant and a Scorpio moon. So I am prone to, Gemini ascendant's prone to mood swings. You know, Capricorn is quite melancholic. Scorpio moon is also quite extreme mood swings, can be. And I suddenly was like, this is just who I am. I don't need medication for this. And you know, and then I looked, I've got like a Jupiter Uranus conjunction in the 6th house, and I was like, well, there goes your kind of manic, kind of like, you know, being okay one minute, and you know, like it's like they said that I was a bit manic, like manic depressive, but as soon as I discovered that actually, yes, I have highs and lows, and they might be a bit more extreme than most people, but that's just how it is for me. I just stopped taking my medication. I wouldn't advise everybody do this, but I actually, you know, just realized that it was doing me no good. Like, it got to a point where I'd look at the tablets and I'd just be like, I felt sick just looking at them. Like, I just knew it was wrong. So yeah, I stopped taking them, and I just took each day as it came. And if I had problems, I would look at my tarot cards, or I would look at astrology. I'd see what was transiting. I'd see that there was a time frame in which astrology like could literally pinpoint when things would get intense and when they would ease off a little bit. And so instead of taking medication, I just managed my challenging chart aspects with astrology. And so, you know, I was having a conversation with my partner the other day, and I said to him, it's no coincidence that I've been, you know, doing astrology for X amount of years, and that was the same time that I stopped taking my medication and have been successfully off medication for so long. Now, I'm not saying I haven't had difficult times, and I haven't consulted like hypnotherapist for like anxiety issues during the pandemic, or like taken homeopathic remedies. You know, I'm open-minded, and I'm not to say that I would never ever take medication again if I needed it. However, I don't think I've ever needed it in the way that I thought I did prior to learning about myself with the depth that astrology provides. So yeah, if I hadn't studied astrology, I think I'd have probably still been in a pretty rubbish job, hating my life, with no kind of real. I think what I get with astrology is a sense of hope and a little bit of magic on a daily basis, you know. And I think that that's the one thing that it provides, that unless I found something else, who knows, I might have gone deeply into a religion or something, I don't know. But I feel like astrology empowered me to be the co-creator of my reality, rather than allowing me to give that power to somebody else, or feeling like I had no power at all, you know. So yeah, I don't know about specifically where I'd be, but I kind of feel like I know how I'd be.
See, that's one of the things that I think you said that really resonates, is that, hey, it found you. And that there is something about the path that finds you as opposed to the one that you kind of carve out for yourself. And I am so thankful that you found it.
Me too.
Okay, so on that same kind of thought process, I do want to ask. Now, you said that it was your sister that kind of gave you the nudge to follow the path into astrology, right?
Yep.
So when you kind of announced it to the world and you said, hey, you know what, I found this thing, I'm going to follow this path and see where it takes me, did you have anyone in your life that gave you pushback, or was everyone kind of like, oh no, that makes sense?
I think most people were supportive, like the people that really knew me. Like, I think because people knew how unhappy I was working in the civil service, and I just really, there was just no passion for what I was doing. It's not that I didn't care about what I was doing. I cared about it too much, and it was a very difficult job for me because I was very overly compassionate. Like, you know, I felt the pain of the people that I was dealing with, and it wasn't a nice job where I was helping people. It was like I felt like I was destroying lives doing what I was doing. Working in immigration, basically. And yeah, I struggled with that. I had a very personal struggle with it. So yeah, I tried a number of different jobs within that, and it just didn't work for me. So yeah, I think people knew how much I struggled with that, and they knew that I needed to do something that was much more me, basically. So yeah, my sister obviously was encouraging. My mum was good about it. And though I really got on everyone's nerves, because anyone who studies astrology, when they first really get into it, all they do is they talk about it all the time. They go, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I did. And I annoyed everybody because I was just going on about astrology constantly. But yeah, it was just one of those things where, you know, I would meet people. I have done an episode on this. I can't remember what the name of the episode is now. I think it's I wrote an article as well, like 5 common reactions, or, you know, 5 reactions I get when I tell people I'm an astrologer. And yeah, often people would just, I get all sorts of reactions when I talk to people about it. But some people get confused between astrology and astronomy. But some people think I'm, you know, crazy. They literally look at me like I'm crazy. Some people, yeah, they just don't understand it at all. They just don't get it, because a lot of people think when you say you do astrology, or when you're going to study astrology, they literally think that you're studying that little segment in the newspaper. Like, how could how could you go to a class and study that, like just that one thing? Like, the depth that you have to study astrology at, as you can see, I'm on episode 100 of my podcast. Like, the potential to study this is, I think, never ending, actually. But for people who don't know, they think that it's like a very shallow, one-dimensional subject, which is basically designed to alleviate boredom on your daily commute or something, you know. And yeah, to those people, yes, I am wasting my time if I'm going to go and study something like that, but I'm not. You know, the thing that I'm doing is deep soul searching and helping people answer some of the questions that they can't find answers to, you know, because they have no understanding of how long a certain transition in their life is going to last for, and whether or not they're going to feel able to continue with a certain area of their life, or certain activity, or certain relationship, or whatever, during this period. So I'm kind of like a weather girl, or like, you know, somebody who can kind of just help to see a window into you know, the unseeable, just for like a brief period, to give some insight. And sometimes I can't give direct insight, but what I can say is, you know, this was a similar transit to what you had, you know, 8 years ago or 15 years ago or something. Can you remember where you were working, what you were doing, potentially how much you were earning, the people you were speaking to? And suddenly they'll go, oh, there was a similarity actually between now and then. And then I'd be like, well, that and what you learned from that period may be the direct kind of advice you should be giving yourself right now? You know, it's like I can't always be the person to tell you what to do, because that's not what I'm here for. But what I'm here for is to guide you through the periods, to almost help you to get in better touch with yourself during these times. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, basically I went on a bit of a tangent there, as my listeners love me to say. I waffled on a bit there.
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about astrology, and it can be very difficult, I would assume, to be in a position like you're in and have people kind of wonder, well, how do you spend so much time and energy on something that, is just that little blurb in the newspaper?
Yeah, yeah,
But it is a very in-depth thing. It can be very cerebral. It can be very cathartic as well, when you start to uncover some of the things that you didn't realize were a part of your astrology.
yeah.
I do have a question from Maria that is, what aspect in your natal chart do you love the most? And what aspect do you find the most challenging?
That's a really good question, actually. I really liked that one. So I think the aspect that I love the most, that I didn't even know was there for a long time, was my Mercury Jupiter sextile. So I've got the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, and I've got a Mercury and Venus conjunction. So it's Jupiter sextile my Mercury Venus. So already the Mercury Venus makes me the sweet talker. If you've got any bad news, give it to me, and I'll tell you, and I'll soften the blow. But actually, that Jupiter getting in as part of the sextile, I just think it gives me a very positive outlook. I mean, like I said, I've got like a very moody chart. Like my chart is there's some challenging stuff in there. Like, not only have I got like Sun, Capricorn, Moon, Scorpio, and my Gemini ascendant, which is, at best choppy. I've got like a Saturn Pluto conjunction, which is anchored to my Mercury Venus conjunction by square. So that is a very challenging aspect in my chart, that Mercury Venus and that Saturn Pluto, the way that they tie into each other. It makes me a great investigator. It makes me insanely obsessive and serious about the things that I love. But it's also very dark, and it weighs you down, and it's quite it's funny. Like, I remember I have this terrible ability to come up with innuendos at the worst moment, like terrible things. And I noticed that somehow I felt it when an opportunity for an innuendo would arise. I'd hear the information go into my head, so I almost think Venus and Mercury, and then I'd almost feel the dip down to the Saturn Pluto, to the, what can I say that's insanely inappropriate and offensive, and then come back up. But yeah, I sometimes I've learned how to button it so that I just filter out that rudeness. And but it's not just that. It's not just that it's like quite rude. It's a funny aspect to have, but it's a generational one, and it's quite challenging. But a lot of people have a Saturn Pluto conjunction. You have it. A lot of people do. So it's like, it's not a curse in any way. However, when you've got it tying into personal planets, it can be a little bit more of a daily exercise. However, I wouldn't say that's my worst aspect. And I do have lots of aspects that are challenging. But I think that the one that I find the most difficult probably is my Jupiter Uranus conjunction, because I can't do anything for too long without it becoming, Uranus and Jupiter are in my 6th house. My 6th house is the house of routine and, work and that kind of thing. And having Uranus there is so disruptive. Like, it makes it so difficult for me to have any kind of actual routine. I can have routine, I can have structure, but I need to have variety within it. And if I'm doing a job, there has to be an element of Uranus about it, or it feels stagnant, and actually ultimately it can lead to me feeling depressed and having mental health issues. which is what happened to me before I discovered astrology. So I'd say that the thing that I find the hardest is probably that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the 6th house, even though it's got its blessings as well. But I do really love that Jupiter sextile my Mercury, Venus. And I also really do like my Mars Pluto trine, because Mars and Pluto are extremely challenging and relentless when they get together, those two. However, I have recognized that I have a trine which can sometimes go by unnoticed, and you can use those planets, like I always say, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. If you're aware of what you've got and you're aware of the less desirable traits that come with those things, you can actually turn it around into something more positive. So that also is a daily exercise for me, to actually recognize, notice when I am able to use that and try and turn it around to be more positive. Because I want to work at a higher level and be a better person, and it just is a constant kind of watch thyself exercise, particularly with those aspects that are almost subconscious in their operation, and trines can be like that, as sextiles can as well. So those are the nicer ones that I've got, but yeah, it's just paying attention to making sure that I use them in the most productive way. Thank you, Maria, for a great question.
I feel like that is, it's a really good place to kind of pause and thank you for sharing so much of yourself with your listeners for this 100th episode today. I'd like to close with a little bit of lighthearted what ifs, and these come from Chris.
Okay.
First one is, what house do you think you would be in from the Game of Thrones?
Okay, yeah. He actually asked me this question yesterday, and we went through all the different houses because I couldn't remember them all. And we agreed that Gravejoy. Did you watch Game of Thrones, Seana?
Little bit, yeah. I don't think I went all the way through, but
yeah. I watched a lot of it. I loved it. The Greyjoys was the most rubbish. Like, who would even want to be one of those? And I kind of settled on, I think it's Tyrell, which Diana Rigg was in that house. She was, and Diana Rigg is just a goddess, I think. You know, she's passed away now, sadly, but yeah, I kind of thought that would be appropriate for me. I did say Stark originally, but Chris went, everyone says they're a Stark, so I was like, okay, I'll be a Tyrell then. So yeah, so that's what I chose for that one. I'm not a Targaryen. You know, I'm not going to be the mother of dragons or anything like that. You know, no cliche.
And then finally, what about your Hogwarts house, and why did you pick that one?
Okay, so I'm still working through the Harry Potter books. I'm just starting book 4, but yeah, I'm slow to it. I haven't watched the films because I want to read the books, and I'm doing the books. So I decided, and Chris agreed with me immediately when I said this. So let's go through them. What are they? They are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I chose Slytherin. And the reason I chose Slytherin is because I always seem to root for the bad guy in films. I do. Now, there may be something that comes out about Slytherin that I may regret that, but as it stands so far, I know that it's full of the baddies, but I like that dancing with the dark side thing, you know. I'm a good person. Maybe that's my Mars Pluto trine speaking. Maybe it's this kind of ability to accept and to almost be enticed by doing the wrong thing, but choosing to do the right thing. Actually, that's what happens to Harry Potter. Always. He's got that power. It's the same with Wolverine. It's like, you know, they don't really feel like they're, you know, necessarily on a good side or a bad side. They are who they are, and they have to deal with this inner battle. Wolverine particularly, he's not on anybody's team. But again, Wolverine, I love Wolverine because of that, you know. He's just like, you know, like the anti-heroes and stuff like that. I love all like anti-heroes. And even when we were watching Avengers Endgame and all of that, I was talking about Thanos, and I went, but what if Thanos is right? And Chris was like, I can't believe you're siding with Thanos. So yeah, I do have this knack for like sympathy for the devil, as the Rolling Stones would say.
What do you think the rising sign for Wolverine would be? I know
Rising
this is
sign.
coming over, so
Oh gosh, a rising sign for Wolverine. I don't know. I think he's got like quite a sexy body. He's been tampered with. He's got all that adamantium inside him. I don't know. I kind of feel like I was joking. Like my one of my friends asked me a question actually, which I thought maybe we should run through it for fun. But yeah, she asked me what would a superhero be for each zodiac sign. And I picked Wolverine for Leo because I was like, he's got claws, he's got great hair, and that kind of thing. But actually, a rising sign for him is possibly like it might be Scorpio actually, because he has this like healing ability, but you know, his body has been transformed. But it might be that he's like it could be that he's, if we're going to pinpoint in like ages and stuff, he could be a Pluto-Uranus conjunction rising in Virgo, because you know, he's had a lot of like technological amendments to his body and gone through transformation. But if we're just going for just pure rising sign, no planets, then possibly Scorpio, I think. I don't know. What do you think? Like, I think that Scorpio rising might be good for him because he's brooding, he's his own person, he's quite private, he doesn't know much about his past. It's a discovery. He wakes up to who he actually is. But actually, yeah, I don't know, there does feel this kind of transformative Scorpio kind of thing about him. Yeah, I think so.
do you want to run through the superheroes of the
Yeah,
zodiac?
let's do it. Yeah, let's see. So which superhero would each zodiac sign be? So for Aries, I had Iron Man. I actually talked through these with Chris earlier, and he agreed with me on a lot of them. So Aries is Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr., I think he's either an Aries or an Aries moon, but he's like, I'm sure he's got like a stellium or something in Aries anyway. But the armor is red and gold. Iron Man, you know, he is actually an arms dealer. And you know, he's like a very independent, headstrong person. He is to Marvel what Batman is to DC. He is a rich vigilante, no matter which way you look at it. But you know, his skill is through engineering and like, you know, creating, you know, all these cool robots and machines and things like that. So yeah, I feel like it's very Aries. Iron Man is. So for Taurus, I picked the Hulk. The Hulk could have been anything, but I went with Taurus. Like, he could have been like Scorpio for like the going through this huge transformation. He could have been Gemini because he's got two very different aspects to his personality. However, I chose the Hulk for Taurus because I felt like it was such a huge bodily change, and you know, like, there's no stopping the Hulk. The only thing that a Hulk is scared of is Thanos. So yeah, so I kind of chose that. For Gemini, I actually, and some of them are like not necessarily specifically heroes, they're just like part of the superhero universes, multiverses. I chose Loki from the Avengers, who is Thor's brother, because he's a trickster.
Like, that fits.
He's a trickster. He's totally mercurial. He's very, I mean, I'd put him more as like a Mercury than like maybe Gemini, but I just felt like he just had that kind of vibe about him. Because you like, not that every Gemini can't be trusted, but he has a way of tricking and getting people to kind of believe in what he's saying. He can kind of like create illusions as well, which I think is, you know, I think that's quite a Gemini skill as well, like being able to
Being charismatic and being
Yeah,
able to kind of create that vision that they want you to
yeah,
have.
yeah. And yeah, I don't know if you've seen any of the Avengers films, but there's one of them. I can't remember which one it is now. I think it might be the one when they're in Asgard, Ragnarok, I think it might be, when Thor returns to Asgard after being away for a long time. And when they get there, um, his dad, Thor's dad, Odin, is there kind of watching a theatre show about like Thor and Loki and how Loki's great and all of this. And they suddenly realise that, well, Thor knew immediately that Loki was shapeshifted into their dad and he was ruling the place in absence of Thor and of Odin, and basically making out to himself to be some kind of god to be worshipped when he was just basically tricking them all. It's just, I find it hilarious, and I think Tom Hiddleston is probably one of the best people they could have cast to be Loki. So moving on, Cancer is Captain America. He's just like the patriotic, he could have been a number of different things as well, but I felt like he had his I don't know, he's very nostalgic. He was taken from the past and he's been propelled into the future, and he's living now and he wants to be back where he was, but he lives by old values and like respects. He's a very respectable person who kind of has traditional values, which you might say, oh, traditional values is Capricorn, but actually I think that if you've got like tradition, patriotism, that's very Cancerian. And so for Leo, I chose Wolverine, as previously mentioned, because he has claws, he has fab hair, he's, even though he doesn't want to, he has like, he finds himself in a position where he is constantly being heralded as a kind of a hero, and he is an anti-hero in a sense, but I think he's kind of got that attractive quality that the Leo has, like how people want to come and sit around the fire. Wolverine, whether he likes it or not, he always had that kind of warmth. The great hair as well. And just because I fancy him, I just fancy Hugh Jackman. So for Virgo, you'll notice this isn't all Marvel universe, by the way. For Virgo, I chose somebody mercurial, somebody who, has they're very cerebral, and, they are respectable, humble, not overly egotistical. Charles Xavier from X-Men, who even has a machine called Cerebro. Then for Libra, I chose, for his sense of justice, DC's Iron Man, Batman, basically, because he is, he's got a very specific set of rules that he lives by. And sometimes he does bend the rules, but he's very, it's like he's got a strong moral code. And, Libra is very much about having, there's a lot about law with Libra, like connected to law and to, not necessarily specifically rules, but about having a kind of code and a set of rules that they live by. Now, this is where it started to get a bit confusing for me, but I'm going for it anyway. So I chose, for Scorpio, I chose Rorschach from The Watchmen. And Rorschach is the one that wears the mask that changes constantly, which is like the Rorschach test that you get with a psychologist. Now, I did actually choose somebody else for Scorpio. However, I've moved, well, actually, I'll tell you who else I had. So I had Rorschach, but I also originally chose Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange I chose because he is in contact with what's behind the veil, which the Scorpio 8th house people are very fascinated by, that which they can't see, that mystery that they want to chase. So like conspiracy, or this kind of otherworldly seances, Ouija boards, that kind of thing. And I don't know if you've ever seen Doctor Strange, but that film is like, the way that they've depicted the spiritual realms is really spot on, I think, actually really, really incredible. And Tilda Swinton in that film is just so brilliant. Now for Sagittarius, I chose Thor because Jupiter is Thor, and that rules Sagittarius. But also because there's, he's he fits that Sagittarian, like if you watch the films, he likes to eat and he likes to drink a lot, and he's quite a very bold, when I say fiery personality, I don't mean fiery in a kind of like angry, but like there's a real gregariousness about him, which I associate with Sagittarius and Jupiter, and his his search for nobleness and for doing something meaningful, purposeful, and for always trying to do what's best for the Asgardians. And also that it is about Asgard, and they do travel to Earth, and there's this like long distance travel aspect that you have with Sagittarius. Now Capricorn, I hope this isn't boring, but this is just totally me nerding out right now. For Capricorn, I chose Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen because he is the watchmaker's son. Part of his meditative process is actually building and taking apart and building watches. When he was younger, he used to make them, and then as he went through the crazy scientific lab mistake, which caused him to become this ethereal, transcendent being. I don't know even how you would describe what he's supposed to be, but yeah, he still used that watchmaking meditation on a regular basis, and it was like kind of a metaphor for understanding relativity. And I feel like his understanding of time and understanding of having lived and manipulated the material realm through through doing scientific experiments that they were doing while he was working as a scientist, but also through the mistake that was made that caused him to become this being, this kind of radioactive being. I don't even know what the hell he is. I feel like that he fits the kind of Capricorn. There's a melancholy. The longer he's alive, the way he is, the more he feels disconnected to earthliness. And I feel like that is a very Saturnian thing, that the longer you're alive, like the more reality you have to handle, the more melancholic it can become, or perhaps the opposite. The longer you do it, you get better at it, but there's a real sense of disconnect with reality.
I like that because every Capricorn I know kind of has a certain aspect of that world weariness. Like, you feel like an old soul and you've done this so many times. And it's just like, all right, come on.
Yeah, it's definitely a Saturnian thing, if not a Capricorn thing. And they can be quite gifted in doing world stuff like this reality, but it can be challenging at the same time, because just because it's a gift that you're able to do it and you can function that way, it can still feel like a treadmill getting up every day. So Aquarius, second to last, we're close to the end now. I chose Star-Lord, which is Chris Pratt's role in Guardians of the Galaxy. And the reason I chose him as Aquarius is because he is just a misfit, just like every other one of the Guardians of the Galaxies. They're all kind of like the rejects, the runaways, the ones that didn't quite fit in. He got abducted when he was a child. All he had with him in his backpack was a tape that his mum made him. So he's still listening to music from the 1970s. And he's just so quirky, but it works for him. He's got that real Aquarian vibe. That's my feeling on Star-Lord, and I love that. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy films are probably my favorite ones. I don't know, it's difficult to say, but yeah, also the other thing is that he finds a community. They're all weirdos, they're all misfits, but they all come together as a community, and then fight crime together. And then my final one for Pisces is so obvious, but it's got to be said, is Aquaman. That film is so Pisces, so Neptune, actually. Like, even the way that like he goes drinking in the pub, like he's just like one of the guys drinking in the pub, and he like comes up onto, like when he comes to land from the ocean, he's doing the most Neptunian stuff that he could be doing, but then he goes to rule the oceans again. So yeah, that's my superhero thing. My friend asked me that, and she probably did that because she knows I like my superhero films. So yeah,
nothing wrong with nerding out on the superheroes. I think that those kind of tropes, those examples of humanity's best and worst aspects are important for us to have in our
very true.
So I do want to thank you for inviting me to interview you for this 100th episode of the Stellium Astrology Podcast.
You're
And
welcome.
thanks for letting me be a part of it. Wonderful to spend some time and get to know other aspects about you, Miss Stefanie James, that I did not know.
Yeah.
If there's anything you want to kind of close with.
Yeah, well, just to say thank you for doing it. It took a while for me to figure out how I wanted to do this. And it just felt like a bit of a no-brainer to get you onto the show, because it's felt like a bit of it's brought back some old memories, like of us doing this before. So it's been really, really nice. It's also been a bit weird being the interviewee. It has been odd. I don't think we answered all the questions, so I do apologise if we didn't answer every single one. But I didn't want the episode to go on forever. And guys, how I just talk and talk. If you are listening to this episode on your podcasting platform, bear in mind that there's actually an enhanced podcast on YouTube. And while you're over there, if you don't forget to subscribe. And if you do subscribe to my channel and you'd like to be in with a chance of winning a Magic of Eye astrological almanac towards the end of the year, all you have to do is screenshot that you've subscribed and email me at Stefanie@stelliumastrology.com. Stefanie spelled Stefanie. I apologise if you've got any background noise during today's episode. I live next to a rugby stadium and they are playing today, and they are noisy. That must be my Moon Mars Square, always living next to stadiums. I don't think I've got anything else to say other than any links for anything. If you want to be on the podcast, if you want your chart featured, which I will be getting back to that soon, can all be found in the link below, which I've created, which should take you to a link page on my website where you can find what you want and where you want to go. But the general way to go is to sign up to the mailing list, because that's where most of the stuff is happening now. So thanks very much, Seana, for coming on, for being my interviewer, for taking a walk down memory lane with me. I really appreciate it.
Full circle, actually.
Yeah.
Where we started was me interviewing you for another show. So
we have gone full circle. And we've just recorded this just at the end of a Mercury retrograde, so how appropriate. Yeah, so thank you very much. Take care, hun, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do something like this again soon.
Yes, thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.